Good morning, Idaho. Hope you're having a wonderful morning, afternoon, or evening, depending on when you're listening to this. Welcome to the Local Yokel Idaho podcast, where we talk about what is going on in the wonderful state of Idaho. This week, I'll be talking about a lot of hidden gems in Idaho, including why Idaho is called the Gem State, Glenn Beck's visit to eastern Idaho, and Idaho being the center of the universe. Kind of an interesting one there. Please join me for the morning banter and weekly facts, but if you're short on time and prefer to skip the morning banter, I understand. You can use the timestamp that is in the description to jump straight to the stories. Welcome to the morning banter. This is just kind of a little bit of an unscripted time that I chat with you guys before we get into the bulk of the podcast about kind of the previous week and just stuff in general in Idaho. I hope you had a wonderful week. I most certainly did. It was definitely a very, very hot one here in Idaho. I was like, yeah, the shop was hot. Thankfully, we have the swamp coolers and stuff where I'm working there, so it keeps everything reasonably cool. But Idaho officially has decided it is summer and it is warmed up. I will admit, was 4th of July last week? My brain is... Things are going super fast, but I think it was. 4th of July was really good for me. Thankfully, it was kind of interesting. It was like the one day that week that the temperature kind of dropped a little bit, and it was just so perfect. I know in Nampa, I don't know about the rest of the state, but the 4th of July in the valley over in Nampa was really, really nice, and the temperature was just perfect. It was warm enough that it was like, oh yeah, this is summertime, it's warm, it's nice, the kids can go play on the water slides and different stuff and go splash and have squirt guns and different things. But then on the other hand, it wasn't so hot that everyone was hiding in the shade and there wasn't a lot of movement and different things. It was just right for a 4th of July. And then when it got to the evening, it didn't get too cool. I remember there was 1 year that I remember that where it was cool, it was really hot. And then it got to the evening and the temperature just dropped. And I was like, cool, we're doing fireworks, but I'm having to be out here in a light coat or whatever, which felt kind of odd and that and everything. I didn't have a lot to share for the morning banter, but one thing I did want to kind of cover, and it's kind of the last thing here before I close it up, is just to thank you guys for your support. I was looking over the details and analytics for the podcast, and this last May, not last May, last year, but the most recent month of May, we broke the podcast record for the most amount of plays in a month, making May the best month ever for the podcast. So thank you so much. I don't have all the hard detail and information to give you about numbers and stuff, because it's a little tricky to calculate that for any of you that have done podcasting or whatever or not. When you do a podcast, you have kind of a distribution center and you can send it out from there. And from that distribution center, it will collect a certain amount of analytics, but it doesn't get all of them. I can see all the views and different demographics and stuff when it comes to people watching on Spotify, but I have to go log into each individual app. I have to go into Apple's, and then I have to go into Amazon's, and I have to go into every single one to see the analytics from that, and then I'd have to add that all up and look across all of them. So it can be a little tricky, but the base analytics can give me the view counts across all of it roughly. I've noticed that cool, I'll get the views and it can tell me the percentage of the podcast that's viewed on each platform or whatever. But sometimes it'll be inaccurate that for instance, for a long time, I thought the podcast wasn't doing super great. And then I logged on to iTunes. Is that what it's called? Whatever Apple's thing is. And I logged on there and I was like, oh, there's actually some really, really nice views in here. And my base kind of application wasn't telling me that or whatever. It was telling me there was a certain percentage of the podcast that was being listened to over there, but it didn't give me the numbers. But all of that to say, we did really well in May. It kind of dipped down a little bit for June, but over the last couple months, it's been an increase. It's kept growing. And I want to thank you guys so much for that support. That you guys are enjoying it, that you're listening to it, and you're sharing it, and that people are enjoying it. Because at the end of the day, I started this to try to be something to help people, to educate you guys about what's going on in the state, including myself. This is I hope you all know is a learning experience for me, that I'm not sitting here and like, yes, I am an expert on Idaho stuff. Not at all. I'm just a person who lives in Idaho. I'm a local. I love Idaho. And I started this podcast to be a way to educate myself more about Idaho and educate you, both on the kind of social front about different cool businesses that are starting, interesting news, or be that politics about getting involved in your local community and stuff. So if there's times where I get things wrong, or there's something that you feel that I need to know about that I might not know, please, really, really, I'm begging you, reach out to me and let me know. You guys are the greatest resource ever and help to me when you guys think of something, be it if it's something in politics, there's an event going on, or someone, voted for something in some way and I missed it. You guys bringing that to my attention is super, 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 super. I can't stress how important it is. An amazing help to the podcast, or if there's a restaurant that you think or whatever else, it helps a ton. But with that said, we're growing. It's exciting to see. I hope it will continue to grow and you guys enjoy it. If you have any suggestions to kind of improve the podcast and help it to grow even better, and ways that I can kind of streamline it and make it better for all of you so you can gather and be educated better about what's going on in Idaho, then please send me email or reach out to me on Twitter, because that really helps a ton. With that said, let's move into the holidays and weekly facts. Starting off with Monday the 10th of July, which is National Kitten Day. As for in history, in 1778, Louis XVI of France declared war on Great Britain to support the American Revolution. In 1913, the highest record temperature in the world's history was recorded in Death Valley, California, at 134 degrees Fahrenheit. And in 1940, the Battle of Britain happened in the English Channel between the British and Nazi forces. As for birthdays, Monday was Nikola Tesla's birthday, and in deaths, in 1884, Paul Morphy died. Next is Tuesday the 11th of July, which is National Blueberry Muffin Day and All-American Pet Photo Day. Kind of an interesting combination there. As for in history, in 1944, Franklin Roosevelt announced he would run for a fourth term as President of the United States of America. In 1916, To Kill a Mockingbird was first published. And in 1969, A Space Odyssey was released 9 days before the Apollo 11 landed on the moon. Kind of crazy to think about. As for birthdays, Tuesday was Robert the Bruce's, John Quincy Adams, and A.B. White's birthday. As for deaths, in 1962, Owen D. Young died. Moving to Wednesday the 12th of July, which is National Pecan Pie Day. As for in history, in 1804, former United States Secretary of Treasury Alexander Hamilton died after being shot in a pistol duel by Vice President Aaron Burr. In 1943, during World War II, Russia defeated the German forces in the Battle of Prokhorovka, hopefully I got that right, which ended up being one of the largest ever tank battles. And in 1957, the U.S. Surgeon General connected smoking with lung cancer. As for birthdays, Wednesday was George Eastman's birthday and is Bill Crosby's 85th birthday. As for deaths, in 1804, you can guess it, Alexander Hamilton died. In 1829, Alexander Cartwright died. And in 1910, Charles Rolls died. Then comes Thursday the 13th of July, which is National Barbershop Music Appreciation Day. Don't hear about those too much anymore. And National Delaware Day. As for in history, in 1832, the source of the Mississippi River was discovered by Henry Schoolcraft. And in 1923, the Hollywood sign was officially dedicated on the hills above Hollywood. As for birthdays, Thursday was Julius Caesar's and Nathan Forrest's birthday, and it is Patrick Stewart's 82nd and Harrison Ford's 80th birthday. As for deaths, in 1762, James Bradley died. In 1951, Arnold Schoenberg died. And in 1970, Ellis Groves died. Next, we come to Friday the 14th of July, which is National French Fry Day, Mac and Cheese Day, and National Tape Measure Day. As for in history, in 1850, the first public demonstration of ice made by refrigeration was done by Florida physician John Gorey. In 1933, the Nazi Party banned all non-Nazi parties in Germany. And in 1941, 6,000 Lithuanian Jews were exterminated at Visrasen camp. As for birthdays, Friday was Gertrude Bell's, William Hahn's and Gerald Ford's birthday, and is Conor McGregor's 34th birthday. As for deaths, in 1881, Billy the Kid died, and in 1965, Adlon Stevenson II died. Real quick, we come to Saturday, the 15th of July, which is National Gummy Worm Day and National I Love Horses Day, probably a very popular one here in Idaho, that last one. As for history, in 1099, Christian forces captured the city of Jerusalem during the First Crusade. As for birthdays, nothing major to note there, but in deaths, in 1919, Emil Fisher died, and in 1948, John J. Pershing died. And lastly, we come to Sunday, the 16th of July, which is National Ice Cream Day. As for in history, in 1439, kissing was banned in England to try to stop the Black Death from spreading. In 1519, the public debate between Martin Luther and theologian Johann Eck happened in Leipzig, at which Luther denied the authority of the Pope. And in 1940, Adolf Hitler gave orders for the preparation of the invasion of Britain. As for birthdays, Sunday was Mary Eddy's, Ida B. Wells, Orville Redenbacher's, and Ginger Rogers' birthday. As for deaths, in 1889, Mary Todd Lincoln died. In 1960, Albert Kesselring died. And in 1999, John F. Kennedy Jr. died. Starting off the news here with our first story. Why is Idaho called the Gem State and not the Spud State? This comes by the Boise Dev by Ann Daly. As most everyone in Idaho knows, we are known for being the potato state, but ever wondered why we're called the Gem State? Well, that is because Idaho is home to a wide variety of gemstones, including star garnets, topaz, sapphire, and jade. The nickname Gem State was first used in 1860 when miners began to discover gemstones in Idaho's mountains. In total, more than 72 different types of precious gems and 240 different types of minerals are found in Idaho's mountains and plains. The state's official gemstone is the star garnet, which is only found in the panhandle of northern Idaho and Indiana. Star garnets get their name from their 6 rayed stars that appear when the stone is cut in a certain way. If you're interested in finding some for yourself, from May 28th to September 6th, with a reservation, of course, you can go to the Emerald Creek Garnet area, which is just 40 minutes of St. Mary's, Idaho, and mine your own star garnets. But if you're not one to travel or just don't want to go that far north, the Stewart's Gem Shop in Boise has them and other Idaho gems for sale. With that said, some of the other gemstones that are found in Idaho include topaz. Topaz is a yellow or blue gemstone that is often used in jewelry. It is found in the Owyhee Mountains in southwestern Idaho. Sapphire, it is a blue gemstone that's often used in jewelry. It is found in the Sawtooth Mountains of central Idaho. Jade, which is a green gemstone that's often used in jewelry as well and in carvings. It is found in the Payette Mountains in southwestern Idaho. Idaho is also home to a variety of minerals, including gold, silver, copper, and lead, not to mention all the lithium and thorium we have. Which I knew Idaho, why it kind of got the Gem State reference. I remember when I was younger, I asked that question and had conversations with my parents, and I kind of explained that a little bit. But it is super cool to see that we have that many things, or you can go mining for yourself at certain places. That's something that is offered here in the state to go see, or at least go to a certain store. I know usually at like the fairs and farmers markets and stuff, you'll always find somebody, I feel like, maybe it's just me, that's selling different types of rare gem type of pieces. If it's like maybe some earrings or stuff that have it in them or different things. I also know doing like rock hounding in Idaho is a really, really big thing. I know there's some families I've heard that love to do it. It's like their thing to go do. It's not hiking or fishing, but just going and looking for different little gems and minerals and finding them and stuff, which is super cool. I, at one point when I was younger, was kind of into that with like the geology and stuff and studying it, and had my little geology book or whatever. But, you know, like most things, when you're younger, you kind of go through phases and in and out, and I move on beyond that. But still, it is very interesting. One of the things I guess I kind of wanted to tap on here that's kind of related to this, but not quite as much, is the fact that I didn't know this, but Idaho has a huge deposits of lithium and thorium and uranium. Now, one might say, well, why are you pointing that out, Tyler? Well, Idaho is positioned in a really good position to be a powerhouse in the world of both nuclear and like electric batteries if we're going to still be using lithium into the future because of that. And so part of me really, really hopes that we can push legislation and stuff to do more of that mining and to pour more of that out so it produces local jobs, because there's a lot of small towns when I've gone up north and traveling and stuff where people are like, yeah, it's a really pretty town. I like it. You know, it's small, quaint and whatever, but they're slowly kind of drying up and dying because their main original industry when they were founded was either lumber or it was mining. And those are the two things that the environmentalists have really, really cracked down on. Now, on the flip side, I'm not going to say I'm someone who's sitting there that's like, yes, totally spew a bunch of unfiltered acids into like a river and completely clear cut, shall I say, an area and not replant it or whatever else. No, not at all. That's not what I'm saying. Definitely take precautions so that when we're doing these operations in these areas, we're not destroying the surrounding environment around these facilities. But man should be allowed to explore and extract these resources for the betterment both of mankind, that we have these resources to do things with, especially in the U.S. where it's not being shipped across a giant ocean liner that's spewing tons of crude oil into the air and then is then being mined by child laborers, maybe in Africa or something. Let's mine it here in the U.S. where we can make sure it's done in an economical and safe way for workers and things. And also it's made here in the U.S. And so we're not reliant on a foreign power. Also the fact of that, you know, with thorium and uranium and stuff, we have Nile down in southeastern Idaho. Yeah, I got that right. That is the leading kind of researcher in nuclear energy and different stuff for it. And then we have all this uranium and different stuff here in the state, which is wonderful. It matches up perfectly for Idaho to build more into nuclear power. I know we have hydro, which is a really great thing, but I think us expanding our ability to create nuclear power is way, way better than any solar or any wind system that we can ever install, and it'll be a way bigger return on investment. And then if people are scared about, you know, what happens if it goes bad or if it goes wrong, we'll go put it out in the desert. We have tons of desert to the south of us that we can put these reactors out there where there's no one. There's hardly anything. There's just farmland out there. Not to say farmland doesn't matter, but you get the idea that you don't want to put it in like the Boise area or the Treasure Valley or near Pocatello or something. We have plenty of areas we can put these plants that if something were to go wrong, they're very distant from any major population center, and then the power can be sent from them. And I think they're a way more reliable way to do it than solar, and honestly better for the environment. And Idaho is really situated well for us to mine our own uranium and have it for our reactors and everything, and have the researchers here in Idaho. Speaking of Eastern Idaho, Glenn Beck's Eastern Idaho Museum exhibit. This comes by the East Idaho News by Rhett Nelson. As we talked about a couple weeks back, Glenn Beck has a museum exhibit that's traveling through Eastern Idaho. The exhibit is called America History Unfiltered, end quote. The exhibit will take visitors on a walk through American history from Christopher Columbus to the space race and the present day. The exhibit is estimated to be worth $75 million, and it is Mr. Beck's private collection. Beck said that he wanted to create an exhibit that would tell the real story of America without the, quote, spin that he often sees in other historical exhibits. He said that he wants people to be able to come away from the exhibit with a better understanding of their country's history and the challenges that their forefathers had faced. The exhibit will feature artifacts from different periods of American history, as well as interactive displays and multimedia presentations. It will also include a theater where visitors can watch short films about different aspects of American history. The exhibit is scheduled to open on July 15th, 2023, at the History Museum of Eastern Idaho in Rexburg, Idaho. If you're interested in learning more about American history, like I think all of us should, I would probably recommend you go to the exhibit. Some of the stuff there seems super, super cool. Plus, they have an interesting website that you can do some research to find out if you still want to go or not. All that to say, from what I was saying from the footage, and I kind of slimmed it down here for the sake of like the script and everything, it looks like a really, really cool thing. I know I reported on it a week or two back, and that episode did really, really well, and you guys really, really enjoyed that, so I wanted to make sure to give you guys an update when it kind of came through and stuff. But this most recent article, when I was reading through it, and maybe I said this last time, I can't remember. The weeks go by so fast when I'm doing the podcast and everything. But it was really, really cool to see some of the things he had. I think he had like a second or third print edition of one of the Mein Kampfs, in a different language, I think, or something like that. And then he had some other really cool like museum props. and then some different type of artifacts or things. Like, for instance, I think he had some of the documents from like Hitler signing for different orders for the invasion and different stuff of Britain and stuff like that. So some really, really cool stuff. I know the more I hear about, the more I'm like, maybe it's worth it to take a trip over there just to see the exhibit. As me being a little bit of a history junkie, I just love kind of being able to like, I actually saw that. That was like right in front of me. But if you guys are like over there in Eastern Idaho, highly, highly, highly would recommend it. You probably will not regret it. Even if you have the kids, it'd be a fun thing, especially for homeschoolers out there, that a rare opportunity that you'll be able to go see. Because I think a lot of these artifacts are usually down in his regular museum that's like either in Texas or Florida or something. So a really great opportunity if you're near there. I would say just take a visit of it. It can't be too expensive. Shouldn't take too much of your time, and you might come away with larger wealth of knowledge and appreciation for American history and be able to actually see these super rare kind of artifacts that have been produced by both our culture and our history. Now moving a little bit into kind of like infrastructure and stuff, big construction projects in Idaho. This comes by the Boise Dev by Don Day. So giving an update on the construction market, Boise had a banner year in 2022 with a total value of projects started reaching $5.205 billion. That was a 24.4% increase from 2021. The significant rise in construction activities was driven largely by office/bank buildings category, which increased from $166 million in 2021 to $1.064 billion in 2022. Some of the major construction projects that started in Boise in 2022 include a new 28-story office building at 12th and Idaho Street, the new YMCA facility and senior living complex at Block 68, the new hotel called The Sparrow, and the Shields coming to the Valley, and then lots of different food places. The forecast for the construction market in Boise for 2023 and 2024 is for a tapering of activities. However, the market is expected to grow with a total value of projects started projected to reach $4.8 billion in 2023 and $4.5 billion in 2024. Which I think all of us here in Idaho and any of the big metropolitan areas or stuff, be it over in Eastern Idaho with like Pocatello and Idaho Falls, or be it over here in the Treasure Valley, we all know that construction has been booming and it always continues to boom with Idaho. No matter what it is, if you look at it, in bad economic times, Idaho, its market will slow. We'll definitely go up and then we'll kind of level out or whatever, and just have a really slow growth period during bad times. And then when it gets great, everything just rockets off the roof. But to see some of these numbers, I didn't even know it was this big. That past year, it was like, cool. Yeah, we have an evaluation of $166 million in 2021. And then now we have an evaluation of in the billions of how much we've increased over the last year, like 42.4%. That's double, which is just crazy to think about. Granted, I guess it makes sense when you're talking about these categories of projects that I think there's a lot of companies that have moved here, and then you have a lot of workers that have moved here, and they're like, cool, but we actually need like brick and mortar office spaces for a lot of these things. And depending on the size of the company, and especially some of them wanting to leave California, and they're like, well, I could go to Texas, but then, Texas has got its own drawbacks and stuff. I'm like, well, there's rural Idaho, and we could go there. And so they're like, cool, we'll put a new office building, or we'll put a new center or whatever else there, or with like Facebook or Micron trying to expand data centers or things here in Idaho and stuff like that. I guess kind of thinking of all of that, adding together, and then you add the housing market and everything, it really has exploded. It was crazy to see these numbers. I would slightly point out the Shields place that's coming over there in Meridian. I didn't know about it a ton. I had kept seeing it, and then this article kind of helped dial it in a little bit more for me. I think we talked about it in the past, maybe? I can't remember now. But it's over there when you're driving on I-84 and you're heading into Boise, and I think it's at the 10-mile exit. Yeah, I think it's 10 mile, where they're building kind of all those new office buildings and stuff, and you can kind of see it back in there. It's got this really large, tall roof and different gables and stuff. But what it is they're going to have a 65-foot Ferris wheel in there, and then there's going to be a 16-gallon saltwater aquarium, a candy shop, an arcade, VR simulators, and lots of other food. It's like an entertainment place, kind of like the mall, but all packed into kind of one place that you can go into. and maybe it's a little bit more casual and hopefully more affordable. I will admit, if malls were cheaper, like the experience of going into a mall wasn't quite as expensive and the prices were a little bit more competitive, and I had a little bit more discretionary income, I think malls are a great idea. I like them way better than the idea of like the Village, because you can go there all year and it's air conditioned and it's this super nice big building and you can walk around and do your business and talk to people and different stuff. And it's a great idea, but the problem with the modern mall, I think, is just it's hard for brick and mortar malls to compete with the prices that online shopping offers. And the person's like, well, I could just do that while sitting at home with some people and buying stuff on my phone, and then it'll come later. And I saved like how much? Several $100s that I could spend on fuel or gas or whatever. And so people being a little bit more conscious about that. So coming back to it here, I think this place is going to be kind of interesting. I look forward to kind of going, especially I think the like 16-gallon saltwater aquarium is going to be really cool to see, and how they kind of design that into the building and plus other stuff. I don't know if it's going to be kind of a competition for like Wahoo's or some of the other kind of fun amusement park places in the valley. But it will be interesting to see how it works out for them. And it's just crazy to see these numbers about construction in the valley. Keeping with the topic of infrastructure and updating from a previous one, Idaho Charging Station Network Update. This comes by East Idaho News by Clark Corbin. Several weeks back, I talked about how Idaho is part of a national project to expand charging stations for electric vehicles. Well, here is an update on what is happening with that. The Idaho National Electric Vehicle Infrastructure Working Group has narrowed down the list of areas that they will be considering for the first round of pilot projects to build electric vehicle charging stations. The 3 areas that are still in the running are Lewiston, Pocatello, and Bliss. For those that don't know, Lewiston is located in the northeastern part of Idaho along the Snake River. It is a major transportation hub with 2 interstate highways, a railroad line through the city. Pocatello is located in the eastern part of Idaho along Interstate 15. It is a college town with a growing population, and Bliss is located on the southwestern part of Idaho near the Oregon border. It is home to the Mountain Home Air Force Base. The group will still select 2 of these areas to receive funding for the pilot project. The project will be used to test different types of charging stations and to gather data on how electric vehicle drivers use them. The data will be used to help the state develop a plan for a statewide network of electric vehicle charging stations. The group is expected to announce the 2 winning areas in August, and the pilot projects are expected to begin construction in early 2024. Which, kind of coming off the previous time that I talked about this, I know some of us country people, and I can agree with this, have a little bit of hesitation about electric things, but kind of to play the devil's advocate in that area, I would say electric in and of itself is not a bad thing. It's just a way of mechanics and how it works, shall we say. I mean, with a combustion engine, you're having an explosion that then is driving a piston, which then creates centrifugal force to then drive that drive shaft. Rather than electric engines or electric motors and different stuff, you're taking static energy and then magnets that then spin a drive shaft, and that then drive shaft creates motion that then can be driven to wheels that move the car. So at the end of the day, different mechanics to just move things. Technically, shall we say, an electric system is more efficient with the energy it has than a combustion engine. A combustion engine has to have a gearbox, it has to have a crankshaft, it has to have multiple pistons. Each one of those have to have different points to articulate and things. And so there's a lot more points that need lubrication and work and or could have failure. Rather than when you're talking about an electric vehicle, you have static magnets that stay put. You have electric cables that are just moving electrical current around the car to the areas that it's needed. And then the only part that you have moving is the drive shaft and maybe the shaft that's sitting inside the electric motor that's in the electrical fields. So technically the chance for failure, the amount of moving parts that need work and operation on is less. So technically it's more efficient than the combustion engine. But the combustion engine currently kind of wins out, shall we say, as we all know, against the electric in the sense for runtime. Not because the engines or motors themselves in electrics are worse than combustion engines. Far from it, they're actually better from what I understand from friends and stuff. But it's the power delivery. When you look the power to weight ratio that a lithium ion battery has to gasoline, it's almost half of that. And so you have to have a huge amount of battery to be able to match the same power density as gasoline. And so it makes it really, really tricky to kind of match the two of them. Now, if battery technology can get better where we have a point where you could have a battery that is only 2/3, it's super close to the power density of gas or equal to gas, I think you'll instantly see kind of gas go away, because technically that engineering when it comes to an electric is more efficient. Now I can understand the other person sitting on the wall there that's saying, well, they're tracking me and they can control my car. And I am all with you there. And that's not great. And that's not good at all. And we as consumers should vote with our money and say, hey, cool, you made that electric vehicle. I'm still not going to buy it because you can shut it down and you can stop me, or figure out ways to get rid of that tracking on our cars and remove it. And then we can have our autonomy for our vehicles, but then have the benefit of the engineering and improvements of electrical power. With that said, coming back to this, there's only going to be more stations coming the road. It seems to be the most common issue people have with electric vehicles is the range and the availability of charging stations. So Idaho kind of working on this, and in conjunction with the federal government, to try to facilitate or encourage more charging stations, I think is a great thing, and also probably a wonderful side hustle if you're someone in those areas, in Lewiston, in Pocatello, in Bliss. Highly would recommend you probably look at this, because in theory you could jump on this. They're going to cover, from what I remember, like 80% of the upfront cost to get running, and then you only have to fit like 20% or whatever, and then from there eventually they'll phase out, and then it's all your own. The cool thing with like an electric car charging station is you have to monitor it. You have to do maintenance on it when, inevitably charge plugs break and cables and electrical stuff and things like that. But unlike a gas station or other stuff, you don't need to have employees on hand. You don't need to have people sitting there all the time. You have a very, very low overhead. The federal government's covering 80% of that, right, to get you off the ground. So I think this would be something, if you're in those areas, to jump into. And if it was here in the Treasure Valley, I would be curious to jump into it, because the idea of, once you get past the upfront investment of the 20% you put in there, which is probably going to be pretty easy because the demand for electric cars is only going up, then you've kind of got a gravy chain of profit and then maintenance and stuff down the line, especially here in Idaho, where I didn't know there's like a ton of electric vehicles when you look at it statistically. I don't have the numbers in front of me, but we're really growing in that. So it makes sense to try to expand the charging station in the state. It'll be interesting to see what this group's design they kind of figure out. I went to one of their meetings and they're still trying to figure out, like, how do we design these stations? Is it designed where it has to be near a restaurant, or can it be in the middle of nowhere? Does it need covers? Does it not need covers? All these different kind of considerations and criteria for when to put a station in, because with gas stations, we kind of figured out how that works. In the beginning days, they were trying to figure it out and different stuff, when cars were first getting on the road. And we've kind of figured out how gas works, that, you've got your station, you've got a cover or pavilion that you drive into, you fill up, and then you have a convenience store, which is the main profit angle for the gas station, because they actually sell that, sometimes the gas at a loss, and they make their profit on all the people coming in to get drinks and food at the gas station. And that model has been figured out of how it works. Rather than electric stations where you're there longer and different stuff, it's kind of a little bit different than a gas station. And so people are trying to figure out, how does that work? How do people best integrate with these things, and what brings them back to each station? But moving out of the construction and kind of infrastructure stuff and back into kind of the fun facts about Idaho, and specifically this one being a little weird, Idaho is the center of the universe. Well, sort of. This comes by the Boise Dev by Ann Daly. I know a very interesting opening, but bear with me. Up in the northern part of Idaho, there is a town called Wallace, Idaho. It claims to be the center of the universe. It was founded in the late 1800s during the silver mining boom, and eventually became known as the silver capital of the world, end quote, mainly due to the fact that the Coeur d'Alene Silver Mining District produced more silver than any other mining district in the U.S. Since 1885, the area has produced over 2 billion in silver, lead, and zinc. With that said, in 2004, the town's mayor, Ron Garitone, proclaimed Wallace to be the center of the universe. He did this using the theory of probabilism, which states if you pick any point on the sphere, the chance of it being the center are equal to 1. Of course, there's no way to prove or disprove Garitone's claims, so the people of Wallace have decided to just go along with it, I think. They even went so far as to put a manhole cover in the town square with the words "Center of the Universe" written on it, which is definitely an interesting story, to say the least. I know if I'm ever up north at some point, I do want to drop by and see it. I also didn't know Wallace, Idaho was such a big producer of silver. I know you have Silver City kind of down in eastern Idaho, or southern Idaho, shall I say, that produced a ton of silver, and I could go on and on about kind of the interesting things about Silver City and all that ghost town that's there. But Wallace is still a town that exists. I've seen photos. It looks super, super pretty. But this is one of the things that I knew about, but it was like cool to be able to talk about it here on the podcast. That is kind of a quirk of the town, that it's been claimed to be the center of the universe. Kind of a fun thing to kind of chat about with different friends about Idaho that might not live in Idaho, or different stuff, to be like, yes, my state actually has the center of the universe. Mwahaha. But definitely something interesting to go up there and see. As I said before, I didn't know that there was so much silver, lead, and zinc that got pulled out of there. I didn't know it was a mining town, but I just didn't know it was that much. But still, something interesting to share and something to laugh about at the dinner table. Now, lastly, we come to our last full story and fun one. Idaho has America's deepest canyon. This comes by the Boise Dev by Ann Daly. Carrying with the theme of Idaho facts, did you know that Idaho has the deepest canyon in North America? For sure, I didn't. Located on the border of Idaho and Oregon, there is the Hell's Canyon, a natural wonder created by the Snake River. It is over 7,900 feet deep at its deepest point and stretches over 200 miles. The canyon is home to a variety of wildlife, including bighorn sheep, mountain goats, and bald eagles. Now, the question you might be asking yourself, and I did as well, isn't the Grand Canyon the biggest canyon in North America? Well, it depends on how you define big. The Grand Canyon has a depth of 6,093 feet and is 18 miles wide and is 277 feet long. Hell's Canyon, on the other side, is deeper at 7,993 feet, but not as wide or long at 10 miles wide and 206 miles long. With that said, Hell's Canyon is also a popular destination for recreations, including hiking, camping, fishing, and whitewater rafting. Several of the hiking trails offer stunning views of the canyon, and also there are several campgrounds and lodges you can stay overnight if you're traveling there from somewhere else. Also, if you're looking for a challenging whitewater rafting experience, Hell's Canyon is a great place to go. The Snake River is known for its Class 4 and 5 rapids. It is a popular destination for experienced rafters. If you're considering the Grand Canyon for a family trip, but don't want to deal with the amount of people, consider going to Hell's Canyon, which is in your own state and is far less busy, I guarantee. So I was like reading this article and stuff, and I was like, okay, this has got to be something clickbait. Like the Boise Dev puts a thing on their deepest canyon, whatever. And I was like, all right, let's read this here. Let's see if this is something relevant. And I knew about Hell's Canyon. I've had I swear it's like 5 different times. It's actually kind of funny now that I've planned to go over to Hell's Canyon, but I've never been, I don't think. I mean, I've been really near it, if I remember correctly, with my grandparents and stuff, but I've actually never been there. I don't think that I can remember in recent conversation, but I was reading the article anyways, and I was like, oh, really? And then I instantly had the question, well, I thought the Grand Canyon was, and so I pulled up the data, and so technically, if you're talking about depth, Hell's Canyon is the deepest canyon in North America. But if you're going then by the breadth of how wide it is and how long it is, it's 18 miles wide for the Grand Canyon, when you have the Hell's Canyon, which is only 10 miles wide, so there's an 8-mile difference there. And then if you're talking about length, the Grand Canyon is 277 miles, rather than Hell's Canyon is 206, so they're really close on those numbers. So I guess it kind of depends on your view of it. I don't know. I'd have to look up some photos about the rock formations. I know that might be why the Grand Canyon gets kind of some of its fame, is because of the beauty of the rocks and the colors and stuff. And Hell's Canyon technically in numbers is bigger and stuff, but it might not have as pretty of a rock formation. I'm not sure, but definitely something cool to know about, and something that you're like, oh wait, I was going to go do a road trip down to the Grand Canyon because that's where you go. And you're like, wait a second, I live in Idaho. I could just go to Hell's Canyon that's super close, and it's going to be nowhere near as busy as the Grand Canyon and all the people that are going to be there, and probably maybe a little bit cooler depending on what time of year you go there. I would say that's a win-win for me anyways, because there again, I love Idaho, and anything I can do to stay in Idaho and support Idaho and discover more about Idaho, I love. But I'm a little biased, obviously, having a podcast about it and different stuff. But just a really cool fact to know and to talk about. I know we brought it up at the dinner table or whatever, and I had different family members like, no, that can't be. And then the ensuing discussion that then came from that was very funny and very educational, shall we say. Now, moving into the quickies, these are stories that weren't worth a full story and discussion, but I felt were still relevant to share with you guys. Starting off here, number 1, we have Idaho invented the Hokey Pokey. This comes by the Boise Dev by Ann Daly. The Hokey Pokey, yes, that's right, was invented in Idaho. As many of you know, the Hokey Pokey is a popular dance and song that is often used at children's parties and other events. But what you may not know, and I most certainly didn't, is that the Hokey Pokey was actually invented in Idaho in the early 1940s. The song was written by Larry LaPrice, a musicianist that was playing at the Ram Bar in Sun Valley. LaPrice was trying to come up with a new song that would get people up and dancing, and eventually came up with the Hokey Pokey. The song was an instant hit and quickly spread throughout the country. Today, the Hokey Pokey is one of the most popular songs in the world and has even been inducted into the Library of Congress's National Record Registration. So next time you're doing the Hokey Pokey, remember that you're actually doing an Idaho tradition that was invented in a small bar in Idaho before we had even won the war. Or you could just win a bet with a friend. Your choice. Next one here is Meridian flag disposal boxes. This comes by KTVB7 by Brenda Rodriguez. I will admit I almost didn't put this story in here because I thought it was a story about getting rid of perfectly good American flags after the 4th of July, but after I read through it, I thought it was worth talking about. The city of Meridian has unveiled 2 new flag disposal boxes with the help of a grant from the American Legion Post 113. The boxes are located at the Meridian Police Department and the Meridian Parks and Recreation Department. The boxes are designed to allow residents to properly dispose of worn, damaged, or tattered American flags. According to the American Legion, there are specific guidelines for disposing of American flags, which include burning them in a respectful ceremony. The new flag disposal boxes are a way for the city of Meridian to help residents dispose of their flags in a way that is respectful and in accordance with American flag etiquette. Boxes are also a way for the city to partner with American Legion to promote patriotism and respect for the American flag. The city of Meridian is hopeful that the new flag disposal boxes will be well used by residents. The boxes are located in high traffic areas and they are easy to use. Residents simply need to place their worn or damaged flags in the box. The American Legion will collect the flags from the boxes and burn them in a respectful ceremony in accordance with U.S. Flag Code. The ceremony will be held on a regular basis and will be open to the public. Next one here is a little bit of a heads up. Large grass burn near Meridian on I-84. This comes by KTVB7 by staff. Keeping with the hot weather theme, a grass fire has broken out near Meridian Road and Interstate 84. Last Wednesday, July 15th at around 10:45 p.m., it quickly spread to about 3 acres of land and prompted the closure of Meridian Road in both directions. Firefighters from the Meridian Fire Department, Boise Fire Department, and Eagle Fire Department responded to the scene and were able to contain the fire by 2:30 a.m. the next morning. No injuries were reported, but one home sustained minor damage. The cause of the fire is currently under investigation. If you're curious for more information about the fire, go check the Meridian Fire Department website. Next is West Nile virus in Canyon County. This comes by KTVB7 by Idaho Press staff. The Idaho Department of Health and Welfare announced last Friday, July 7th, that the West Nile virus had been detected in mosquitoes in the population of Canyon County. This is the first time that the West Nile virus has been detected in Canyon County in 2023. This virus is a mosquito-borne illness that can be serious or even fatal, especially for people over the age of 60 or with certain chronic health conditions. Symptoms of the West Nile virus can include fever, headaches, body aches, nausea, vomiting, and a rash. In some cases, West Nile virus can cause more serious complications such as encephalitis or meningitis. The Idaho Department of Health and Welfare is urging residents of Canyon County to take steps to protect themselves from mosquito bites, such as the following: wearing long sleeves and pants when outdoors, especially during dusk, dawn, and when mosquitoes are most active; using insect repellent that contains DEET, picaridin, or IR3535, draining standing water around your home, such as bird baths, flower pots, and gutters, and installing screens on windows and doors. If you think a mosquito may have bitten you and are experiencing symptoms of the West Nile virus, they recommend you contact your doctor right away. Also coming back to the fire theme, firefight near Hayden Lake. This comes by Coeur d'Alene/Post Falls Press by Bill Bewley. For those up north, a little bit of a heads up. A wildfire is burning near Hayden Lake in Kootenai County, Idaho. The fire, which is called the Hayden Lake Fire, started last Thursday, July 6th, and has burned about 100 acres of land as of the writing of the script. The fire is currently burning in a steep, rugged terrain that is difficult to access. 53 firefighters from the Idaho Department of Lands and the U.S. Forest Service are working to contain the fire. The cause of the fire is still under investigation. The fire is currently 85% contained. IDL says that the fire is expected to be fully contained by July 8th. If you're in the area, please be aware of the fire. Use caution. And for more information about the fire, use the IDL website. And now we come to our last quickie on a little bit of a positive note. Sandpoint Motorboat Show. This comes by the Bonner County Daily from Caroline Lobsiger. The Sandpoint Boat Show is an annual event that showcases classic wooden boats from around the country. The show will be held July 14th to 16th at the Sandpoint Marina and Sandpoint Boardwalk. The show will feature dozens of wooden boats, including everything from small skiffs to large yachts. Visitors will have the opportunity to see the boat up close and learn the history about it, and even take some boat rides possibly. In addition to the boats, the show will also feature a kids boating building program, live music, food trucks, and a beer garden. So if you're a fan of wooden boats or you're just looking for something fun to do this week, be sure to check out the Sandpoint Boating Show this coming week. For more details, just check the article down in the description in the show notes. Thank you for listening to the entire podcast. I sincerely hope you found it enjoyable and valuable. If I missed any important points or provided incorrect information, please feel free to reach out to me via email at localyokelidaho2022@gmail.com or on Twitter by tweeting me at localyokelidaho. As a one-man show, I'm not able to cover everything, but I do my best to cover the most interesting and important stories. Thank you for your continued support and assistance. That's all for now, and I wish you a fantastic rest of your week. Godspeed.